The Allandale Neighbourhood Association with Don McNeil, who's standing back there attempting to look innocuous or indiscriminate. I have a couple of procedural items before we start with the town hall meeting. The first is that I've been co-chair now, well, chair and co-chair now for going on 3 years. I was elected 2 years ago for a 2-year term. Most of the executive was elected for that same 2-year term 2 years ago. In May, at the annual general meeting, we're going to have elections. Some of the executive will be willing to stay on. I am fortunate in that there's a vice chair willing to step up to be chair. But we need people who right now are complaining about what we're doing to come on to the executive board, or at least offer themselves as candidates. We can't promise to get you elected. So you have a couple of months to think about this, but if you want to know what the executive does, please get in touch with me and I'll tell you. Because we do need more people on the executive so that some of the ones who've been around for a while and are verging on burnout can be extinguished. So, that's the first thing. The second thing is, there's a very red-green light box sitting over there on the table. Over the past few years, we have met all our expenses from your contributions as you leave. Loonies or Tunies will be fine for that. Right at the moment, we're sitting with $340 in the bank, and that is only because in the last 2 or 3 meetings we have not put out flyers. With another $100, we could start a website. So if we were to get a magic number out of tonight, we might be at the point where we could start a true Allandale Neighbourhood Association website. So don't forget when you leave, just to dig your hand in your pocket, do I sound like a preacher? And put a little money in the red-green box that the ANA is always having there. Yes?
You think a website is better than flyers?
Yes. We were putting out 1,700 or 1,800 flyers, and when I say hands up how many people came because of the flyer, we get one hand up. We need to get out that many flyers, we need 10 or 12 volunteers. It was always the same people, and it wasn't 10 or 12, it were some people doing 300, 400 flyers. And that's not tenable in the long run. But a website would help a lot for that. So, just bear in mind, we need executive members, and if we don't get any volunteers, then in early May we'll start knocking on doors, and there'll be 2 or 3 very big, strong, burly people with me as I invite you to put your name on as again. So, true volunteering might be better. Tonight's meeting, as you know, is a town hall meeting, and we have both our Mayor, Jeff Lehman, and our new Councilor Arif Khan here, and the floor is open for them and you.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I'm truly excited, and look forward to, after this evening, getting to meet more of you on a one-on-one basis. I certainly want to thank Bill for your diligence and your warm welcome. I certainly appreciate the fact that you do send out regular emails and keeping everybody up to date, and it's valuable, so I appreciate that contribution and the opportunity to be here. It's only been about 5 weeks, and day 1 into it, I was handed about 800 pages of budget material, along with another 500 pages of procedure material, etc. Thankfully, we were able to get through it. Those of you who are paying attention over the last few weeks with the budget discussions, no doubt will see that some of the smaller items were more interest, if you will, or a lot of public feedback and commentary, whereas some of the larger ticket items passed without any discussion, which is really quite interesting. But one thing that was really nice was the amount of feedback from our neighborhood, from our community, people sharing their thoughts on well, just really where they stand and where they think the city should go. And so, although I'm quite certain that there has yet to be a council that has been able to satisfy everybody's queries or concerns, I think that council as a whole put their best efforts and foot forward, etc. And I'm really quite pleased with the results. So hopefully we'll be able to have some of that discussion and over whether it's tonight or the next few weeks and address those concerns. if any, and see where we're going for the future. Just to let you know, outside of the budget discussion, I do have a few open items that neighbors have shared with me. Some of them concern parking, some of them concern snow removal, some of them concern property standards, most of which I've been able to address, I believe, to the satisfaction of the people who shared them. Some of the items are outstanding, and I have made a commitment to get back now that the budget has, since we've had that discussion. So I certainly invite anybody who has a comment or a question or a concern that would like to share with me. If there's any assistance that I can be, I certainly will be there to assist. So share my contact information with you afterwards, or you can just get it off the website or by calling City Hall. I don't want to take too much more time during the introduction. I'm sure that there will be, and I hope that there will be some feedback and questions raised. I know that Bill, you put out quite a healthy set of suggested items for discussion, and I think that's fantastic. So I don't want to take any time away from that. And I guess I'll leave it at that. So thanks very much, and I look forward to being with you over the next couple of years.
Lehman, I'm the guy beside Arif. And at 20 after 8 tonight, unfortunately, I have to leave the meeting a little bit early because I'm going on the Tony Jurgis show, live with Tony Jurgis on Rogers Cable, to try and explain the budget. The show, you could not have a show long enough. So for those of you who are interested in the budget, hurry home. We go live at 9 o'clock. But anyway, the purpose of tonight really is to hear from you and your questions and answers. So I'm not going to give a 20-minute speech. Lauren Wild, who's here from my office, if you have any concerns tonight that you want a follow-up from us, if you want us to follow up with you directly after tonight, please leave us with your name and contact details, and we'll get back to you. But Lauren's also going to make sure that we have record all the questions and the issues that are raised, because this is my 22nd town hall meeting since I became mayor, and I find them invaluable, regardless of whether there are 20 people or 200 people, and there have been that range at different meetings in different parts at different times. And you know, there are lots of issues local to Allandale that we can and should talk about. I'm just going to spend 2-3 minutes on bigger ones, and just we can talk about whatever you'd like tonight. But I'll wind back very briefly to the start of November. Council, because we were halfway through our term, said we needed to get together and look at our priorities. We were 2 years in. What had we got accomplished? What did we feel more work needed to be done on? And when you have these kinds of strategic retreats, occasionally you hear about government going to very fancy places to do that, nice hotels, that sort of thing. You'd be pleased to hear we use the confines of the cafeteria at the surface water treatment plant. Nothing is finer than Saturday morning at the surface water treatment plant. We spent the day, and the morning we spent on saying where are we and what do we need to put more effort into it, and where do we feel we've made progress. Those of you who've heard me talk about this before know that we started this term with 5 priorities. Controlling growth, managing. Controlling growth and managing. Fixing the city's finances. Creating jobs, revitalizing the downtown, and what I call opening up City Hall. Everything from these types of town hall meetings to being as accessible and available as possible, and at the core of it, getting people more involved in the decisions that we make and how they affect our community. At the halfway point of our term, we felt there were 2 in particular that we wanted to put more emphasis on in the second half of the term, and that's not to say we're not going to be working on the other 3. But the 2 are jobs and our finances. Those are the 2 key priorities for the next 2 years. We want this city to be a city where there are more opportunities for people to work here. We do not want to be a bedroom community. And actually, if you look at the numbers, surprisingly enough, we aren't today. We have a lot of people who commute out, and a lot of people who commute in. But we want more of the latter. And we want more good job opportunities here. We also said that we have to fix the city's finances, and those of you, as Arif said, who have been following the budget debate know the contortions we went through in 9 hours of debate on the budget, ending at about 11:30 last night. I suspect it's not a budget that's going to make a lot of people happy. I would say, though, that it is a necessary budget, and one that finally does things that needed to have been done for many, many years. I'm happy to talk about that a little bit more. But mostly what it's going to be about, and it is going to be about for the next several years, is making sure that the city does not go further into debt, that we are able to do the repair work that we need to do on our roads and pipes with funding that's available when we need it, not by borrowing. And that is a very difficult thing, because we're going to have to find that fiscal room. We're going to have to put a little bit more away every year so that we're able to do the work that's necessary while still managing the 60 services that the city of Barrie delivers. Part of the reason I think we put the focus on those two priorities is we feel that there's been progress, not mission accomplished, but progress in a lot of ways with the other three. I think in our downtown, you probably heard me say before, I count the number of vacant storefronts on Dunlop Street as one measure. And 2 years ago, in January of 11, we had 24 vacant. Today there are 8. We have a huge new grocery store, office tower, and condominium building, 8 stories tall, each of them going in. It's not an 8-story grocery store. Grocery store is 1 floor. Then there's an 8-story office tower and an 8-story condo beside it. That's what's going in across from City Hall, that enormous construction site at Collier and Lancaster. And what's important about that, more than just the grocery store and all the other good things that will be in there, is the 500 people that are going to work there during the day. Because it's daytime uses that we need to revitalize the downtown, to create customers for the shops and services in the downtown. We certainly have a strong nightlife. I don't think we need to help that anymore. What we really need to strengthen is the daytime economy. And some of that, to be frank, goes for Allandale too. Because I've always thought that the area that we're in right here, which was once a small town center, almost like a village center, can be that again. It can be that again. And we don't see it yet, I'm the first to admit. We don't see that yet. We've seen some great couple of businesses come in, and we've lost a couple of really good ones just in the 2-3 blocks around here. It hasn't happened yet. But it is the kind of process that I think can happen over time. And as things like the intensification, the people that are going to be living on Bradford Street start to take hold, that will create a demand for those local shops and services that I think can help strengthen part of this neighborhood. There's a lot more I could talk about. The jobs issue in many ways is so important, and yet every government is guilty of claiming we are more important than we are when it comes to creating jobs. We don't create jobs, by and large. Public sector is about 1/3 of our economy, and it grows and shrinks with government spending. But real job creation comes from the other 2/3 of the economy, which is the private sector, and particularly small business, not just in this town, but more broadly in the Canadian economy. So there are a lot of things that we do as government to get in the way sometimes, and some of those things we have to keep continuing to do. But what we really need to do is create the environment in which businesses can grow. And I'm a big believer in expansion of the businesses that you've got, not just recruiting new companies to Barrie. Although I will say that job fair at the South Shore for HDS was just astonishing. We had this approach from this company. How strange is this? It's an Indian company that wants to set up a call center in Canada. And they looked around and they said, this is a young community. There are people here who set down roots, so there's more permanency to our labor force. And they said, if you can get 2,000 applicants, we can get 2,000 people to apply, then we know there's the strength of the labor force here to support a 500-person inbound call center. And you know, it's a call center. Yep, it's a call center. But you know what? It's inbound. It's not telemarketing. It's customer service. And they're all full-time jobs. They all have benefits. And they are not minimum wage. They're not really well paid, but they're not minimum wage. And 100 of the 500 jobs are IT, HR, management, administration, and so forth. And they are a little bit better. You need a full range of jobs in the economy for a full range of people with a full range of skills. And as much as we've got new jobs at IBM and the TD National Operations Center and folks who have very, very high skill levels and frankly high incomes that are getting those jobs and working there, we need a full range of employment. And we will pursue any opportunities we can. So we pursued HDS with a great deal of fervor, and hopefully in the next few weeks we'll get good news on that one. As I say, there's a lot more I could talk about, but the point of tonight is not to give a 20-minute speech, but to give a 5-minute speech and then to be able to do questions and answers. So I think I'll leave it there. I do want to say, having been in front of you before and as always, just email or call me if you ever have a concern or a question. And my apologies if it occasionally does take several days, even more than a week to respond. It can. We get 2,000 emails a week. And Warren and Nina handle many because they're routine inquiries of one nature or another. But we actually get that volume of correspondence, if you can believe it. But I try to respond to as many personally as I can, and if there's an important issue that you want to talk to me about, I will always make the time to do that. So thank you, and I'll sit down now, and maybe we'll just open the floor to questions. But thank you again all for coming tonight.
CN station, what are you doing with that? Where is it at?
So,
Sorry, but
yeah, no, not at all. I think everybody's aware of the legal situation. The legal situation does not prevent us using that building. There is what's called a certificate of pending litigation, which the city is attempting to clear in the courts. And I'm happy to give you a bit more detail about what's happened on that lawsuit if you're interested. But with regards to the building, we would like to see probably one of the 3 buildings fit out. And in my own opinion, pending resolution of the broader matter. I don't really want to wait. I don't want to let this lawsuit, continue to delay the use of the interior of the building now that the exterior renovation is complete. It probably limits what we might do in the station, and I think we have to wait and we'll have to wait and see what develops on that front. But my own opinion, I would like to see a coffee shop and probably at least a temporary exhibit space for some of the railway memorabilia and or some of the not-for-profits that have come to us and said, could we use this space? There are several of them out there. What needs to happen is an interior fit-up, and that's going to cost something. So we would like to do that with a tenant. And we just this afternoon, Carla and I, or at least Carla and I, sorry, we weren't there for that. Carla and I were talking about the next steps in terms of bringing in a tenant. So I don't have anything new to announce for you, but our intention would be that we don't wait a long time to get that building into public use.
Are you still reserving in front of the station to bring back the engine and the van?
There's been no change to that plan, but there hasn't been any planning done to actually move it back yet. As you know, the whole area is torn up right now for the William Street drainage project. So we want to get that done first.
Jeff, right in front of the train station now, there's some mounds of, I take it it's just regular earth that's going to be leveled out come the spring. I was wondering, considering the lack of some ice space and the fact that we used to have a lot of skating on the front, is it possible that that could just be leveled? You could have a rink there in 2 weeks if things cool down a bit. So.
If we ever get winter. By the way, is there anybody left who thinks global warming's a myth? There was a rink, as you probably, most of you will remember, in the plan. The notion was actually like a half-moon shaped pond in the summer that would be a rink in the winter, just like the one at City Hall, except that one's fully round. It was it's still there in the plan, Paul, but there's no plan to build it yet. So I think it's fair to say there hasn't been a lot of movement forward on the permanent end state of that building, and it is unfortunate given the legal circumstances. We are doing everything we can, and we are succeeding in that battle, but it's happening.
This will be directed to Jeff because it might be a little early for you. I have a comment and a question. I'm a recent semi-retiree, and I must say I've been taking advantage of everything that the Allandale Rec Centre has to offer, and I'm extremely impressed at the variety of services that we offer. I didn't even realize it myself, and I'm currently taking Spanish and meditation, and there's just a myriad of great services available that I was unaware of. So thank you for that. The second question is, since Janice Laking, that's going back a little ways, we seem to always have a struggle with the budget pertaining to police services and fire services. Almost a rubber stamp approach to the way we handle those. And I haven't been current with the budget discussions, but how are we dealing with that? And do we really have much control over that? It seems in the past, at least, that we don't do much about that for fear of them not showing up to put your fire out. And I'm wondering how we're tackling that seriously in this day and age of real economic problems.
Yeah.
And I know there's the unions and all these issues, but somehow we're going to have to take a big chunk of the budget. And somehow I'd like to see some leadership if it can be done. Any comments?
Absolutely. So the two biggest items in our budget are actually the police and then the county, and after the county social services and land ambulance, and then fire. So really the emergency services, if you count that land ambulance piece from the county, more than 40% of the city's budget. About a quarter, 25% is police, fire is another 10, 12%. Land ambulance is actually surprisingly inexpensive. You know, one of the things when I became mayor and joined the police board, I kind of went to the first 3 or 4 meetings to get my bearings and really understand the legislation and the constraints and the way the process seemed to work before I started to say, okay, this is what needs to change and this is what needs to change. You're absolutely right. We had a 9.7% police budget increase in 2010. In for 2011, from 10 to 11. From 11 to 12, we worked very, very hard. We cut down a number of the we still hired. We hired 4 police officers and a civilian. But we cut many of the other items in the budget and got it down to 4.3%. This year, the police delivered 3%. And that was the police board, frankly, pushing pretty hard on the police senior management to say, enough's enough. We cannot continue to have police budgets increasing at this pace. To be fair to the police, we have this total paradox, and it's not just in Barrie, it's everywhere. Just crime is dropping. Crime is way down in Barrie. Crime is down by 20% from 3 years ago alone. However, calls for service to the police continue to increase, and increase by numbers like 6% a year, which is this year, 6%. That's because people are calling the police for a whole bunch of stuff that they never used to. It used to be you'd say, turn down your damn stereo to your neighbor. And now they just call the police. So we started a year ago. I mentioned I went to the first kind of few meetings, and then I said, well, something's got to change. We formed a subcommittee called the Resource Allocation Subcommittee, nice innocuous title, to look at what was driving up those calls for service, the non-criminal calls for service. Why were the police spending more and more time on all this other stuff? Could they be better used? And we identified the top 5 things. False 911 calls are the #1 issue because they have to go. They have to go. If you get a pocket dial, you can't ignore it. You get a 911 call, you hear bumping in the background, you hear voices in the background, but you can't contact anyone. They figure out where that cell phone is and off goes the cruiser. They have to go because one of those calls out of 1,000 will be somebody lying on their floor. So you've probably noticed if you read the Examiner, just about every day now there's some funny story about a dumb 911, false 911 call. A woman called to find out what the number was for a taxi the other day. It's called 911 in Barrie. This is the kind of stuff, and we're putting those stories out to try and encourage people not to do that. I won't go through the other 4, Mike, but it includes things like noise calls, which we are discussing whether or not there's a bigger role for Barrie bylaw to play. Because if it's a noisy stereo at 4 in the afternoon, maybe a bylaw officer in a Prius can go out rather than 2 guys in a Charger, 2 frontline police officers. And things like this, just use them more efficiently. So we've done 2 things. We've knocked the budget increases right down to about 3%. But to be fair to the police, they continue to be called more. And unless we want to accept them being later and later and later in responding to calls, it already takes them hours sometimes to get to noise calls. We're going to have to change fundamentally the way policing is delivered. And what we want to do is focus them on police work. And it's everything from getting more CMHA caseworkers to ride along with police officers to help with mental health calls. So it's not a police officer sitting at RBH for 6 hours. It's somebody who's trained to deal with somebody who's got a mental health problem. It's all those sorts of fundamental changes. was going to take time. Long answer. That's the police. I haven't even touched the fire side. But
Is it fair to say that the reason crime has fallen 20% is the increase in policing effort?
we don't really know, Bill. There's a correlation because we know that when we deploy more resources in a certain area of the city, it makes a difference. When Bruce Bowles became the staff sergeant for the downtown, he initiated a number of operations, some of which people saw and noticed, and others they didn't because they were undercover. And it was very, very effective. The crime numbers really were, it was quite effective. The same thing happened in the East End when they ramped up the patrols for move-in week. The calls last year in September were down 40% from the year before because the police were just there all the time on the Friday and Saturday nights, and the parties never got out of hand. So, not many anyway. So there's some relation, but I don't put all the credit to that. There's some other stuff at work. There's demographics. An aging population, crime is always going to go down because we all get older and wiser. And some of it's the economy. I mean, we remember that we've been through a recession and we're gradually getting better. And there is a correlation between unemployment and other social problems and crime. So I think a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
I remember reading about a statistic years ago about police calls pertaining to they're way down when the weather's really cold. So this global warming thing.
The worst day last year, I actually sat in the police comm center for a Saturday night during the move-in week this year in September, and the weather wasn't that great, so it was pretty quiet. The worst day last year was St. Patrick's Day. Do you remember how warm St. Patrick's Day was? It was about 22 degrees on March 17th last year, and it was a Saturday night. Downtown Barrie was a zoo. Just a zoo, and so was the East End. School was still in, and they couldn't have had enough officers to deal with that. So yeah, there's nights like that, perfect storm nights where you've got great weather and a holiday and a Saturday night.
At least that wasn't London, Ontario.
At least it wasn't London, Ontario. That's right.
That was a nightmare.
Yeah, that was worse.
Jeff, staying on the police beat for a minute, I had a disturbing conversation with somebody a couple months ago, I guess now, and it relates to the number of officers that are not doing street duty. They're off of duty for a number of things. And this individual said that for Barrie, compared to many other comparable sizes of communities in Canada, that we have a very high, disproportionately high number of police that are not actually doing full duty. Is there any truth to that? Or?
Sorry? When you say no full duty, I just want extra.
Like they're off on disability, or
they're off on disability, or they're on suspension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not on suspension. There are a few, unfortunately, and the stuff that's been in the media lately is appalling. There is. I don't know the answer to that question, Paul. To tell you the truth, I guess because I don't know how many, what's typical in other forces. I don't hear the police senior command telling us that they have a problem there and the need to hire up to get more officers on the street. I can tell you my own experiences being in the comm center. It is only Friday and Saturday night between midnight and 4 a.m. that they truly run short. And run short is not, they never miss a priority call, but a noisy party can take a couple hours to get to, and there are even occasions when they don't get to all the priority 4 level calls. Whether that's because we have too many people who are grinding a desk or otherwise off duty, I don't really know. I'll ask.
Okay, thanks.
Fire department.
Yep.
There was an accident one day at the corner of Ann and Tiffin Street. Fender bender. The ambulance was there right away. Two police cars showed up within 10 minutes. 5 minutes later, 2 fire trucks showed up. What the hell are they doing?
Yep. So, if there's a 911 call that says motor vehicle accident, serious injuries, and that's in the judgment of whoever.
It wasn't a serious injury.
Well, it's in the judgment call of whoever's on the phone and then the dispatcher. So somebody on the phone says, oh my God, I just saw a car accident. It looks really bad. I think there's people hurt. Or it just looks really bad. The dispatchers will say, off you go. We have a rule, and this is why you see fire trucks showing up to apartment buildings when there's no fire. They go to medical calls, because the rule is the closest Mikey goes to the call, and that's the cardiac unit. So there are defibrillators on all the fire trucks, there are defibrillators on all the ambulances, and you want to get the first defibrillator there first for any kind of a cardiac call, anybody's collapsed, anything like that. That's why you see them going to medical. Same kind of principle for car accidents. They send everyone, hopefully they quickly send everyone home when they're not needed. Sometimes you see fire vehicles parked across the road blocking the accident scene. That's a common thing for both the police and fire to do. The police are there for the accident, you know, to take reports from the people involved, see if charges are warranted and so forth. But the reason you see fire and ambulance showing up is because there's been an emergency medical call, and police, or at least fire and ambulance, go to all of them.
Why 2 fire trucks?
Pardon me?
In my mind, why 2 fire trucks?
Why 2? Yeah, to block the scene. That's the typical deployment. You see 2 trucks almost always.
We had
for all
3
the
police
calls.
cruisers there.
Pardon me?
We had 3 police cruisers.
Yeah, I know, and I get this a lot, and it always looks like a whole lot of resources. I would say this, they're sitting in the station anyway. I think people think that because they see them out at calls, it's somehow more expensive.
Well, we're paying
Not
them.
really, just the gas.
Yeah.
And that was actually something that came up a number of times. People have said, whether it's commentary at the bottom of the Examiner or whatever, oh, you know, they're billing extra. I actually asked the fire chief as well as a number of the others this question, and it was actually a good piece of information, good bit of information. To my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong. To my understanding, when you see the cost of the $800 cost of a fire truck attending a scene, and you've got 5 guys standing around or whatever it might be, the first message that I got from them was the massive size of the truck alone is a safety benefit that they're protecting in case there's a sleepy driver, somebody texting on their cell phone, whatever it might be, from causing any further damage. So they'd rather the truck take the hit. In terms of cost, though, the cost shift that we see is an accounting shift. And basically what the fire department is doing is showing the, I don't know if it's chargeback, so to speak.
Well, basically
it's
figuring
an
out how
internal.
much car accidents cost is a portion of the total budget, and so that's how we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But let me just tell you my experience with this too, because I was one of those people in Barrie, all through being, even the first couple of years I was a councillor, I thought, why does all this equipment go to a fender bender? Then I was on my way to the A channel on election night in 2008. And we were hit by a drunk driver. I was actually riding in the back of a car. My wife was in the front right, and a friend of mine was driving, and we got rear-ended by a drunk kid. And then he kind of bounced off us and head on another car. This was right on the Dunlop overpass. And we were just coming down towards Cedar Point. So I won't go through the whole story for you, but the police showed up, the fire showed up, the ambulance showed up. People in the other car were hurt. We were all just whiplash. The people in the other car were fairly badly hurt. And the fire, we helped a little bit, and then the fire department really took over, and then the ambulance when they got there. While we were there was a police car blocking the off-ramp from the 400 so that people wouldn't come into the accident scene. And another drunk driver hit the police car that was blocking the scene. And we were all standing around and we watched this guy just drive right into the cruiser. And you know, I remember yelling, "Are you kidding me?" And it's shocking, right? It's the safety procedure on scene. Whether they're standing there blocking an accident or back in the hall, they're on duty and we're paying them. So I don't think it's a cost issue. However, I would say that one of the things that the county is particularly concerned about is when we have tiered response, police, fire, and ambulance, that the right level of resources are going to the right calls. Because the ambulance service in particular is overwhelmed. The ambulance, our paramedics, we don't have enough. They can't get to all the calls soon enough. They're really stretched. So they are looking for help from the fire departments, including volunteer ones.
Well, they didn't get a lot of help. There was 8 firemen there.
Yeah, that Ford truck, yeah, that's right.
Better overkill than underkill. It drives, I tell you what really got me down is taking these same crews and they go to Zare's shopping.
Yes.
What the hell's that about?
You get that all the time, that's true, because they're on duty. And if they get a call on their radio, they got a basket, they put the basket down and get on the truck and go.
Do they not have some guy at the station with a little truck that can do this?
No, we don't put extra people in the stations. We don't put extra people in the stations, only the duty people. So down at Ardell, we get 2 trucks, our Ardell station number 3. 2 trucks, 8 guys. And you'll have 1 duty truck go out and buy up the food for the shift. Yep, they do that with the truck. And they've got the radio on, and if they get a priority 1 call, or even a 2, they'll go. They'll go then from Zare's.
I don't think this is a very issue or simple. I think that's...
I would suggest. First of all, come on out to a police board meeting. Come on and talk to us about exactly that. Listen to what we're doing, listen to the list of commendations, and listen to the complaints, because those are all public. Those are all public. And the meetings are open. So come on out. And it'll give you, I think, a sense of the fact that there are a lot out there doing a great job, and unfortunately some...
Yeah, and they're always complaining they need more money for this, they need more money for that. They got more equipment than anybody else. The only thing they don't have is an helicopter.
That's
But
true.
they're probably going to get one when they want one.
Not from me.
I'm kind of inclined to agree with you that Barrie does have a bad reputation. I haven't had any personal dealings with him, but the talk around is that you have a bad reputation.
Well, right now, yeah, for sure.
I was going to ask this, you might think this is a funny question, but why does the fire department have to go and shop at Zare's? Like, aren't they at work? Can't they take their lunch
Yeah,
like
they're
everybody else?
on a 24-hour shift.
Okay.
So they make and eat 3 or 4 meals.
That's part of their contract, I guess.
That's what they do.
They're on a 24-hour. They're on
Yeah, I
a
get
24-hour shift. So they if one needs to go to the grocery store, if there are 3 sitting at the fire hall and there's a fire call, that truck can't go and deliver service because that truck requires 4 people to run.
Yeah.
So they have to go as a unit to the store.
No,
We're
my
not.
question, it's okay, the answer. My question is why wouldn't they take their lunch? Why
Yeah,
wouldn't they
sure.
go-
Well, and why not stock up on a bunch of groceries ahead of time and that sort of thing as well? Fair enough. I think I don't really know the answer to that question.
I think if you see a doctor that's working a 12-hour shift or 16-hour shift, he's not running out to the grocery store.
Yeah. Do you know what? I guess it's funny, I hear this one so much that I suspect it's a practice they could change. I'm going to ask the fire chief about it. I mean, when I have in the past, because I hear people say this all the time, why do I see the fire truck at Zare's? I think there's an assumption that they are off-duty or wasting time or on the taxpayer's dime, taking the city truck to go do their home grocery shopping or something.
Well, I always thought they were on
But
their
they're
way
not.
home from work. I didn't.
Yeah, no, they're provisioning the station, and they typically, buy the food for the crew of 8 for 4 meals, and then they make it themselves because they, can't go out to a restaurant with a truck or something like that.
When we run camp in the wilderness, we make a grocery order. You have about 10 pages, and every single bit of food you can imagine is listed there, and you tick off how many of this, how many of that. They could do that once a month and have all that food in. Now, wouldn't have fresh lettuce, they might mention tomatoes, but maybe there's a lot of good frozen and canned foods around these days. They could put in a grocery order, have it delivered once a month. Be a lot cheaper than having these guys all get out and back.
There's no difference in the cost.
Yeah, I guess that it's really not a cost issue beyond the gas to get to and from the Zare's, but this is something that seems to really bother people.
Certainly in the pure.
And it really, because I think it appears to people like they're going grocery shopping on the taxpayer dime, which actually they are. They're buying the food for their shift.
But it's not very efficient.
But, they're on duty. If there's a call,
Yeah.
they go from Zare's.
Well, I'm just thinking, carry on with what Sue is saying. I think it'd be a great idea. Like for 2 months, they could analyze what each of the 4 halls have been
Yeah, spend
purchasing,
on food or something.
figure it
Be
out,
able to make a little
and then it becomes a repetitive list.
Yep.
They know exactly.
I will tell you our fiscal problems are way bigger than where the fire plant
I think we're also instituting an idea that we're telling we're telling teachers where to eat, or we're telling anybody else where to eat. They're getting paid. Do we have a right to tell them that they have to brown bag? I don't know.
I mean,
It's an interesting question.
No, they still make it. No.
24 hours. I guess you're right. But I want to ask you about the police budget.
Yeah.
There was talk in the past that a lot of the money goes towards the police that have to work at the courthouse.
Yes.
Has that changed? Is the province paying for some of that?
Yeah, so the province, say what you want about Mr. McGinty, they uploaded some costs for municipalities, some of the ones that were downloaded in the 90s, which has helped us. One of the things they are uploading, they're doing it over 7 years, so they're doing it very slowly, 14% a year, so after 7 years, that's 100%. So what they did is they started uploading some social service costs a couple years ago, and they started last year, the year before, uploading court services costs. So this year, I think it's about 40% of those costs will be paid by the province. Yeah, the total court service cost is about $3 million. So when it's done, it's a $3 million upload. Now what we've done is said we you may recall, the police wanted a brand new headquarters. We said we can't afford it. Just can't afford it. We're not willing to go that deep into debt. We're going to have to make do with the old headquarters, even though I would invite anyone to visit it, even though it is too small. They've got rented space now just for some officers, because that station was built in the 90s for the city of the day, and unfortunately it's too small. But we weren't prepared to build a new station for it again. One of the things we wanted to do was wait until that court services upload had created some money that we could put into the building. So we are taking that court services upload money and saving it for the cost of the new building, so we don't have to issue debt. Or as much debt. We'll see what it ends up costing.
Mr. Mayor, 3 things from listening to everything. The gentleman back here was not satisfied with the police department. I moved here 15 years ago, basically because of the police department that they had in Barrie, and it's old school policing. They know who the good guys are and they know who the bad guys are, and they treat them proportionally. As for the fire people shopping at Zehrs, as you say, they're with a radio. They have a radio with them at all times, and they move as a unit. To be bringing sandwiches in for a 24-hour shift for 8 guys, personally, I would rather have a fireman come through my door eating fresh food, or after eating fresh food than stale food, because when I need a fireman, I'm very glad to see him come through that door. Sane men run out and women run out of a building that's on fire. They run into it. So I think it's the whole idea of freshness of their food, and they take turns cooking, and who's going to cook what. You've got 8 people you're cooking for. So, and it's not 8 children, it's 8 alpha males or females, okay? So let's just all keep that in consideration. Now, the reason I came here tonight, because my wife told me to, she wanted to come here. She's been here a couple of times. But the other night we were on our way to see to go to the movies, and going down Bayview, southbound Bayview, and we were going to go on Mapleview. And on that turn, the new turn they put in there, it was Saturday night, and a couple of dads were leaving, I guess, the 3rd period, or close to the 3rd period with their sons. And I was making the turn, and the light was changing for them to go in the crosswalk. I saw it. I stopped in time. I didn't scare them or anything. But I thought to myself, this is such a long curve. There should be a light there for when the crosswalk goes, to a flashing yellow light to notify people. Just take a look at that crosswalk. It's the way it is. It's angled.
And Mapleview, right by the BMC.
Yes. Yeah, on the northwest corner. Okay. It's such a long. It almost looks like a run-on lane. So you think you're good to go. So just if you could take a look, get someone to take a look at that, and I'd hate to see somebody get hurt.
What's
Take
Like,
Thank you.
the pedestrian going across.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? Having been down there lots for Colts games, now and again a concert, it's actually not a great environment to have crowds of people. And it's not going to get any better with Park Place, to be frank, because you know we get a lot more traffic in and out there. It's nice that those restaurants are there. They're a good amenity for people who use the VMC. I see a lot of people walking back and forth now from Milestones and Wild Wing and Lone Star. But in my humble opinion, if we had it to do all over again, the Barrie Molson Center should have been downtown. It would have been easier to get down there. Would have been tougher to park. But you know, you can figure that stuff out. But then all the restaurants are right there, and you know, downtown is just easier to walk around than trying to walk around Mapleview. It's a tough place to walk around. That being said, we can always do stuff like that to try and improve the safety. So we'll definitely look at it.
Yeah, the other problem with that very same spot is once you do turn right, that's actually a right turn only lane where you have to turn into Park Place, and it's not indicated yet.
People merge.
Yeah, so can we put a sign there saying this is right turn? Because you have to, you cannot go straight.
Yeah, the lane runs out. Yeah.
Yeah, it stops right at the
We'll take a look at that too.
input into the Park Place.
I'm hoping to change the subject entirely. I know people are really concerned with the practicalities of these and whatnot, but I'm hoping both of you can answer this question, and it's a bit of a broader question rather than the specifics of stuff. There are a lot of examples of very, very poor planning in Barrie. Park Place would be, the whole Park Place Mapleview area is an example of poor planning. Massive tracts of housing where people can't walk to a store or a restaurant or a place of employment. Lots of examples, and there are obviously efforts to try to fix that through new transit planning and intensification. What I'm hoping both of you can speak to is more of a question about your vision for what Barrie is going to be as a city. And I'd like you to speak about that specifically in relation to the annexed lands. You're basically working with a blank slate. I've heard plenty of comments about how there's not going to be a lot of commercial in the annexed lands because Barrie has more commercial than we need for decades. But to me, that doesn't really make sense. Why not have commercial where people are going to live? Because you're just perpetuating the poor planning practices of what is essentially a suburb within a city. So I'd like both of you to speak to your vision for Barrie as a whole and the annexed lands specifically, and how you see that developing.
Good question.
Great question, and I appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to catch you before you left. I know
Yeah,
we
for
talked
sure.
about policing and fire.
One of my favorite questions, though. So
Vision, that's a matter of opinion, but I appreciate the question, and just to make it clear, we didn't compare notes beforehand, so this part will be fun. I'll be learning something interesting myself.
I may as well, yeah.
But certainly a favorite topic, if you will, of mine. I think there's opinion and there's also legislation, and I'm going to have to get my legislation correct or corrected as necessary. But if I understand things correctly, the speed at which we develop the annexed land is either has changed or will be changing to be a little bit slower, and that's separate from opinion and vision, if you will, because I believe there's a push to the intensification in the downtown or in the already populated areas. My personal vision, something that I've talked about with a number of people over the last several months, and I think it became a very popular topic of conversation, is actually our vision for the immediate area here. I think that personally we have a lot of areas in Allandale proper here, if you will, and along Bradford that are looking a little bit tired and run down, and maybe we've seen some transition over the last number of years for industry and business moving out, and what the potential could be for this area of Allandale in particular. Myself, I would love to see a complete redo of the Essa Bradford area where it meets Gowan and Tiffin, if you will, and I'd love to draw a better comparison to this, but if you will, sort of the Yorkville type of look or the Summerhill type of look, where you've got local butchers, local grocers, local fish market, an area where it's a meeting place, a social gathering place, and perhaps with the lands that we have here that are currently being disputed, there will be an opportunity to do something incorporating that whole area. That's a topic for a discussion down the road. But I think that there is certainly a character and a charm of of historic Allandale that I think, I hope we get an opportunity to, if you will, capitalize on, build upon, and I think that there's a lot, it would be popular. It would be a nice idea that a lot of people are enthusiastic about trying to grow that area. As far as the, and by the way, the downtown, I personally would love to see finally some integration between what we know is the downtown and the areas right beside it that seem to be disjointed. There's that sort of empty swath of unfinished business along the lake shore and Bradford Street. So I think a lot of people would like to see that finished. As far as the annex lands, if I maybe going back a little bit, I think I did hear you saying that you'd like to see that growth slow down. I personally would like to see growth slow down. I agree wholeheartedly with you. If my numbers are correct, from hearing from Ed Archer, 75% is a residential tax base, like 75% of the population or more. And I think the healthy number is somewhere around 60 to 65. Maybe it's a target or an ideal. But you're right, perhaps we do still have far too many people that are commuting. And when they're commuting, they're leaving home, and other than paying property taxes, which don't pay the bill, don't carry their own burden, if you will, people are spending their after-tax dollars, if you will, or their tax dollars down in the GTA.
Just to clarify, when I talked about sort of attractive veterans, I wasn't necessarily talking about people commuting out of Barrie to Toronto,
Understood.
But you see it all over Barrie. People can't necessarily walk to their jobs, or bike to their jobs, or take a bus to their jobs. And if there's massive tracts of housing that have no relation to the commercial and industrial and employment base in the city, you have what we have here, which is too many people in their cars, congestion points like S on the 400. So it's kind of a legacy of planning that the city has kind of inherited, but some bad decisions have been made along the way as well.
You tend to see attractive new housing with a Max Milk on the corner, and no real business, no industrial or outside of retail, let's say commercial.
Professional offices.
Yeah, and I think that would be a goal, and I think that goes in line with the goal to get us away from only attracting the more entry-level position type of employment. So I don't know if I'm entirely answering your question. I certainly agree with that perspective wholeheartedly. My other goal, if you will, is I really want to see this university come to town, because I think that there will be so many spin-offs from that. I think it will attract, or it'll put us in a position to produce some higher educated people who will be able to be a better fit to these types of jobs that we're all hoping will come to Barrie. There's arguments on both sides. There are a lot of people who are quite disappointed with the loss of the industry that we've had, sort of the higher paying industrial jobs that we have. Do I see those all coming back in a hurry? No, not at all. I don't see that happening. And I think that there's a transition and a need to retrain, if you will. And there are some people who genuinely are scared because they're thinking, I'm mid-40s, early 50s, who's going to retrain me, who wants to hire me? That's not something I know the answer to, but I certainly respect that concern and appreciate that concern. And I think there's going to be a generational gap, but if we do get this university, not only will it be a center for higher learning, it'll also attract a lot of administrative positions, and it'll also spur on or spawn a lot of sort of the ripple effect of businesses that and people who are there to support that new economy that this is going to create. Don't forget about the fact that it'll be construction. It'll be years of building. So, I'm going to leave it there for now.
Well, I guess with regards to the annex lands, you're right. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from mistakes in the last 20 years, and that's not to say those neighborhoods aren't great neighborhoods, because there's a lot of great things about some of the newer neighborhoods in Barrie. But one thing that used to drive me nuts as a councillor was we planned a subdivision, and then 2-3 years later, the little commercial store plaza that was supposed to be the neighborhood plaza, the developer would come in and say, I can't make a go of it, so can you convert it to residential? And then you lose your neighborhood store. We all know what's happened with schools. They've gotten bigger and further away from their students. And that's just a funding reality for school boards. But, you know, one of the best things Bill Davis ever did in this province was he put schools in walking distance in most neighborhoods. Kids walk to school. It doesn't happen anywhere near as much anymore. So when we went to plan the annexed lands, do we have a vision? Yes, there's 10 principles. And actually one of the 10 is that there will be local shops and services in walking distance in every neighborhood. So those 10 principles are all up on the website. I won't try and rhyme them off, but some councilor named Lehman came up with one about 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when the annexed lands issue was coming to a head. She thinks there's only 4. But the point is, how will things be different? When you walk around a neighborhood in the annexed lands, here's what you'll see that'll be different. We're going to have either a park or what's called a village square. This is new. This will be new in Barrie neighborhoods. Green space, village common, like there are in New England or in England itself. Unprogrammed green space, just a big open green square, where you can do everything from throw a frisbee and run your dog to everything else. If there isn't a full park, there'll be one of those in walking distance in every neighborhood in the South End, in the annexed area. There will be a slightly greater range of housing types. So there'll be more townhouses, probably be a few apartments in every neighborhood. Generally, they'll be at the center part of the neighborhood where there will also be shops and services and hopefully a school and other institutional uses like a senior's home or doctor's offices, those sorts of things. That's the vision for the residential areas. And we have this all mapped out now for all of the annexation lands. There's 2 chunks, the one to the west, which includes Highway 400, and the one to the east, which is over by Yonge and Mapleview. And if you look at the maps, you can actually see the neighborhoods because there's a green space, a coordinated, connected system of green spaces called the Natural Heritage System that goes through all of the annexation lands. There's quite a lot of valley lands and woodlands that are not going to be developed. They're protected in the plan. About 1/3 of the annexation lands are environmentally protected. So that's the residential area. And if, you know, there is a limit, to be fair, that the city can go to saying this is how this area will be. Because if somebody doesn't want to open a variety store or a doctor's office, you know, it won't be there. You have to have somebody who's willing to do that. But we can make it as easy as possible and plan it in from the beginning. And frankly, council can say no when somebody comes along and says, no, we think this should be residential. No, it's important to have neighborhood shops. It is important. The other piece for the annexed lands that I think will be different, you're right, Barrie was very much the poster child for sprawl when it came to retail. And I think a lot of the Mapleview area, which was planned as a business park. I mean, the reason why there were no sidewalks and shoulders on most of those roads is because it was supposed to be industrial. Well, it turned out not to be industrial. And that was a bit of a death of 1,000 cuts. Over 20 years, successive councils let more in, let more retail, let more retail, let more retail. And, you know, to be fair again to them, that's what was in demand. The industry wasn't coming, the retail was. They had to put it somewhere, so they converted some industrial land. But now,
the thing is, the Q County vision isn't necessarily just meeting the demand of now, but thinking of the future.
Correct.
So
now we have another chance. And with the lands along the 400, we've zoned them all for office and industry. And we have said, as you said, we don't need any more major retail. So there isn't going to be another power center. There are going to be grocery stores. There's going to be at least 3 or 4 grocery stores in the annexation lands. There will be a bit of a commercial node, not a mall, but like a young Big Bay Point kind of size node down south of Mapleview on Yonge, like around Mapleview on Yonge. And there will be smaller ones in all of the neighborhoods, local retail, and in some cases enough like a grocery store. But you know, it's one of the things. It's a basic thing. A complete community is the vision, where you've got all the services that you need, hopefully in walking distance, local shops and services, and a park and a school. That's what we would like to see, and hopefully we will get closer to it than with the last round of growth.
Jeff, one of your other projects that was really good, I think you started the groundwork for it about 6 years ago, was the Historic Neighborhood Strategy Committee, which really was quite visionary, very good. Stacey Forfar headed that up, and I believe it came out in 2008 was the report, around something like that. So as you're aware, I've shared some emails over the last couple of weeks. You've been privy to some of the issues that I've taken concern with at the HNS regarding the street signage, the Heritage Street signage, which the Allandale neighborhood community here has worked with me, and I've responded to them in designing, the train logo as part of the heritage sign. And as of last week, they've maintained, and they've passed a motion that they refuse to entertain the idea of having a graphic image on it. Bill was just telling me before the meeting, city staff said they won't do it because the signs will be stolen. They've also told me that you can't recognize images, but the fact is, like I've talked to optometrists, and they've said, no, images are better than text on signs, and they convey so much more. Like the picture's worth 1,000 words. So what does one do in that kind of a situation? I have resigned from the committee because I've decided to put my efforts in an area that there isn't rancor and caustic comments going back and forth. The committee doesn't even have full representation of the 6 neighborhoods in the city. It only has about half, and maybe just a bit over half. Would you be able to rejoin that committee and get it back on track?
So I went to a number of the meetings last year, I guess, late 11, early 12. I followed the email trains. The committee made a decision about the signs, and I know you disagree with it.
They also didn't meet for 7 months. Like, how often should a committee be meeting?
That's really up to the chair.
Yeah, and that's part of the
problem.
I
think the HNS, to be fair, said it was 6 things that were priorities for the historic neighborhoods. Some of them are things that a committee can implement, and others are things the city has to do. Mm-hmm. And some of them we have done, others we haven't done at all. One of the biggest ones, like for example, the Heritage Barrie community, I don't know if you've been to a Heritage Barrie meeting. Bill certainly has. They've really taken on a lot of finally what the HNS asked for. They are slowly working through that very difficult process of identifying they have a long list of properties, identifying the property owners who are willing to work on heritage restoration designation, rather than trying to slap a designation on them and then have the owners fight it. But they've also done something else. They started up the heritage awards. Right? They started giving out awards to people who have restored heritage properties. That's a great thing. We recognize them in council. Easy little thing to do to promote preservation of our historic buildings. So they're kind of running with that one. The bylaw enforcement one is a big one. That's something that came right through and has been a topic around here when I've been at town hall meetings. That there needs to be more rigorous enforcement of property standards bylaws and things like the second suites and illegal rooming houses and those sorts of things. It may not seem like it, especially after last night's budget debate, but council actually does want to do that, and our CAO actually is running with that as part of her current internal work to reorganize bylaws. And I talked earlier about the police and the potential to do a little more work for the bylaw for noise and minor complaints, thus freeing up the police to do more work. That also means more of the complaints will be attended to because the police don't get to all of them. So I guess what I'm saying is I've been frustrated by the fact that the HNS committee seems to have got stuck on street signs, of all things. Mm-hmm. Right? We went through this process for 18 months where we consulted people in all the neighborhoods, had hundreds of submissions. And to be frank, to hear that the meeting was spent arguing about whether a train goes on top of street signs is pretty sad. It is. So, I look at it and I still take out that report from time to time and say, this was the best example of citizen-led planning, if I do say so myself, since I came out of it. And I was very enthusiastic about it. It was frustrating to me that one side of the issue seems to have tied up a whole bunch of people's time and energy. But I'm glad that other elements of it seem to have made a difference, because it is important. And I never forget it.
It was supposed to be a short thing, and it was going to actually be in effect, and the signs were going to be installed supposedly by October. And then Lynn Strawn, for whatever reason, abandoned having any more meetings.
Well, I think it's fair to say she disagrees with you on that.
Yeah, well.
I just want to, it was something we talked about earlier, and I'm wanted to get some clarification, because
Yeah.
it's going through, it's about the Memorial Cup.
Yeah.
Now, the original story was that there was going to be, there was a staff report, an initial cost of $2.5 million to expand another 800 seats, which anybody who thinks that it's only going to cost $2.5 million to put 800 new seats in is insane. It's going to be at least twice that. Also, the cost of the dressing rooms, was a bone of contention in the budget hearings, $590,000, something like that. Plus, I don't know if anybody realizes this, but the CHL requires that your press box actually have one. There is no press. There's no press facility at the BMC. There isn't one big enough for a national event.
Not for national. There's a press room downstairs.
There is a press room, but you don't have a press box. I'll tell you what.
There's the standing area at the top of the deck, right at the far north end of the arena.
But if you were going to put seats in there,
there's going to need to be an improvement. Yeah.
So I was just wondering where we are. Is the city going to underwrite this? Because the City of London just told the Knights that they're not going to anymore because they already had it. So at the end of the day, with your own city staff saying your economic spin-off is only going to be about $2.5 million, is it worth it to us to bid on this when Mississauga had to guarantee the CHL? That's actually it's in your staff report. They're looking at an economic spin-off of about $2.5 million.
The Kitchener report are 10 to 15 million.
Well, the Brandon report, I mean, the whole story wasn't told there. Part of the economic spin-off that happened in Brandon was the fact that the province and the feds kicked in $13 million to improve the Keystone Center, which is a massive facility. I mean, you have to see this thing. This is not just a 5,000 square foot rink. This is a curling sheet. This is, they have the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair there every year. This is a gigantic building. But they put $13 million in. I think that's where your economic spin-off is.
Well, our CAO came from Kitchener. Carlisle was the CAO in Kitchener until he...
They're also community-owned.
Pardon me?
They're also community
money there, but you can't build $2 million of stuff for a one-week event that's not going to do you any good the day after everyone goes home. That's a waste of money.
Yeah.
So, if there's going to be changes to the facility that are required for the Cup, and there are, that's on the Colts, as far as I'm concerned. The one exception, which Council decided last week, the dressing rooms will split half the cost, because the dressing rooms will allow us to bring in midget tournaments and bantam tournaments and bigger silver sticks and all those other tournaments that actually make the taxpayer a little bit of money at the BMC. So that has lasting benefit. In terms of the bid itself, we don't know yet what it may entail in terms of city dollars. We're at the level of what do we need to change with the facility, and then the other major issue that's out there right now is the Colts lease is up at the end of March 2014, which needs to be renewed. And so we're having that discussion all at the same time. All will be public, by the way, and for decision when it all comes back, and probably very soon. Oh, yeah, sorry. The dressing rooms aren't going to get built unless we get the Cup. There's just enough time to do that. The Cup is awarded in May. Yeah. And then what happens is the next host city goes out to this year's Cup, which is Saskatoon, and watches everything and sees how it runs and learns what they need to do to run a successful event. And then they come back and you start work. And there's enough time to do the work because there's a fair amount of it, but it's all relatively minor renovations in the building. Yeah, so the council motion was that half of the money for the dressing rooms needs to come from non-taxpayer sources, so basically sponsorship or CRF, a fee on the ticket.
Jeff, it's almost 8:20.
I know, Mike Press is going to kill me if I'm late. Maybe I'll, okay. You may get short answers.
Update on the university. Did your bus plan with is it 5 hubs or 7 hubs? Did that get fit into the budget? Because I didn't watch the budget, it's pretty dry. Did it get in there for this year?
Yep.
Is it $707,000?
$700, yep.
Yeah, okay. So an update on the university. And then something came across my desk last week about LUMCO. Do you know what that is? Large urban mayor's office.
Yes. Would that be the fiscal tools thing?
Yeah, something about the
Real Estate Association?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're going to be, I guess, petitioning the Ontario government to change the Municipalities Act?
Yeah, I love that.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, it's not quite true. There's a ring of truth to it, but let me tell you exactly what's going on there.